113 teams to go in my road to predict all 131 teams this college football offseason. And guys, we are now on to the Maryland Terrapins, a team that got back into bowl season last year, right? They got back in the bowl season, and this is the team that is trying to take that step in the next direction, right? They're trying to move and take that step up. So can Maryland find themselves back in yet another bowl game in 2022, or will Maryland be taking a slight step back this upcoming season? What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome to my channel. And hey, I'm predicting all 131 teams this college football offseason, which means I'm doing your favorite team. So, guys, if you could, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when your favorite team has been uploaded. And, guys, I do a lot of videos on this channel about every team. Maryland, this goes out to the fans that root for the Maryland Terrapins, but in general, whenever you watch one of my videos, you guys are going to know your teams a lot better than me. So if you feel like I missed something, you want to add something onto the video, or you feel like I made a mistake, which I get that happens, leave it in the comment section down below, and I will definitely read through your submissions that you have. So without further ado, Maryland football in 2022. What's it going to look like, Nate? I'm curious. Well, they are my 10th ranked team in the Big Ten Conference in my preseason power rankings here. Last year, again, like I said, they made a bowl game and they won. They won their bowl game to end with a 7-6 record. They were only 3-6 in conference, but again, that's all you need as long as you can win your non-conference games in order to make a bowl game here in the Big Ten. That's all you got to do is win 3 games in conference play, but it's a thing that's going to be easier said than done. So looking at the stats for Maryland from last year, this offense was one of the best in the Big Ten. They had 441 yards per game, along with around 30 points per game. And their defense, well, that's the side of the ball that needs tremendous improvement if Maryland's going to want to take that next step. 415 yards and 32.5 points per game last year. That 32.5 point per game mark was second worst in the conference last year. So if that tells you that this defense needs improving, there you go. This defense definitely needs to be able to take some steps in the right direction for Maryland to keep going. This offense is going to be fine. But speaking of this offense, let's see what they lose off of it and what they lose off their defense. They do lose leading rusher Tayon Fleet Davis, 721 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. That production is gone, and they lose quite a bit off the wide receiver production. Daryl Jones, Brian Cobbs, and Carlos Carrier are all gone. Brian Cobbs and Daryl Jones was a former NC State transfer. That kind of panned out, but also kind of didn't. But Cobbs, Carrier, and Jones were all around the 300 to 350 yard mark. And it was actually Carrier who had the most touchdowns out of the group with 5. But those 3 combined with 8 touchdowns last year. So you lose that production, as well as your starting tight end, who was your 3rd leading receiver last year, also had 5 touchdowns last year. In terms of the defensive side of the ball, they lose a lot on the defensive line. A lot on the defensive line, especially guys like Holt. Really, really like Holt. A guy named Sam. I'm not going to try to pronounce that last name. I will butcher it. But he had 55 tackles and 6 sacks last year. And then guys like Robinson Jackson gone off the defensive line as well. In terms of linebackers, you got Brandon Jennings and Terrence Lewis gone off the linebacking group. And, excuse me, off the defensive back grouping, you lose Jordan Mosley, who was your leading tackler last year. Also had 8 passes defended. Levante Gator, Nick Cross, or a couple other guys leaving that defensive back group there as well. But you know what? This team's got lots of talent coming back, including what I think is the 3rd best quarterback in the Big Ten, in Taulia Tagovialoa, Tua's younger brother, still in college, still playing for Maryland. He had 3,860 passing yards last year, along with 26 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. Did have a 69% completion percentage, which is pretty good. So as long as he can clean up some of those decision-making things, right, or some of those bad and risky throws, and if he can get a little help from his offensive line, he was sacked 25 times last year. That's absolutely going to be huge for this offense, right? Especially if they can keep opposing defensive linemen out of the backfield. In terms of the running back room, well, Colby McDonald is coming back, was their 2nd leading rusher last year. But also Famatau is coming back as well. Chalin, he had 3 rushing touchdowns last year, and McDonald had 2. So still some talent coming back in this running back room. I think any one of those 2 guys can have a really, really good season for this Maryland Terrapins team in terms of the wide receiver room. You get Jacob Copeland. You also have Dante Demas, Jayshon Jones, and Rakim Jarrett coming back for this team. Rakim Jarrett, Dante Demas were 2 guys that were absolutely spectacular for them last year, especially Rakim Jarrett, 829 yards, 5 touchdowns. Dante Demas, we know he's a good threat out there as well. So Taulia's got a lot of weapons that he can use with this Maryland team. In terms of on the defensive side, you got guys like Finau, China Rose, Hippolyte, McCullough, Jacorian Bennett, Tarheeb Still, and Isaiah Hazel coming back on this defense, along with more names that you could list here as well. So, guys, let's take kind of a first look now at this Maryland Terrapins schedule, and it looks like this. Non-conference, you got home games against Buffalo and against SMU, a road game against Charlotte. In non-conference, you got road games against Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Penn State. And then you get games at home against Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, Ohio State, and Rutgers to finish off the season. So let's kind of talk about some of these games here a little bit. There's a non-conference game that jumps out to me. It's going to be a tricky game, I feel, for Maryland. It's the game against SMU. SMU is a really, really good team coming into this year, and I feel like SMU can surprise a lot of people in the American, may possibly be able to even make a run towards the American championship game, as there are a couple sneaky contenders in that conference, and we'll talk about them more once we get to that conference. But in terms of this game right here, look, this is a game that Maryland's got to watch out for, right? SMU is a very, very sneaky team. This is a team that can catch up on you, but Maryland's got this game at home, which is good news if you are a Maryland Terrapins fan, but you got to watch out for that game. In terms of when you get in the other 2 non-conference games, don't really interest me that much, although Charlotte is a team that I am predicting to start becoming on the up and up. So that's a really exciting team right there too, and definitely another team that Maryland might want to watch out for on the road. And speaking of on the road, there are some pretty tough road games here on the schedule for Maryland. They got to go play in Camp Randall, in Happy Valley, and at the Big House. So all 3 of those games going to be really, really hard for this Maryland Terrapin team to win any one of those 3 games. On the road against Indiana, kind of the only road game I can see them winning besides the road game against Charlotte. Of course, on this schedule, I should say the only road game I can see them winning in conference play. In terms of home games, you got some pretty favorable teams at home. Michigan State. Michigan State's a team that has a lot of questions coming into this year, but still should be pretty good. I imagine Purdue is going to be a pretty good football team as well. Some favorable ones like Northwestern and Rutgers at home. And then, of course, Ohio State at home as well. That's just going to be a very, very hard game. Ohio State figures to be one of the top 2 teams in the country, if not the best team in the country in 2022. Guys, I don't do game-by-game predictions. I do a more percentage-based outlook to help me predict a team's record. If the game is in red, I don't see you winning the game. If the game is in orange, I still don't see you winning the game. But hey, it's college football and upsets can happen. If the game's in yellow, that's your 50-50 upset potential games. Games in yellow or games in yellow-green are games that you probably should win, but watch out for the team on the other side of the ball. And games in green are you're probably good to go to win the game. So again, the game is against Buffalo and Charlotte. I do see Maryland being able to win those games, although that game against Charlotte, I would watch out for that Charlotte 49ers team. But especially watch out for that game against SMU in non-conference, guys. That is a landmine of a game, and I know Maryland gets it home, and we all know how dynamic this Maryland offense can be. But SMU's got a pretty dynamic offense of their own, and if this Maryland defense does not take a couple steps up, it would not surprise me if SMU were to roll in here into Maryland's building and pull off an upset win. Maryland's got to watch out for that game. They really do. Once you get into conference play, there's where you start to see your games in orange. And those are, of course, the road games I mentioned before, as well as Michigan State and Ohio State. Look, all 5 of those teams right there, you could be looking at the top 5 teams in the Big Ten right there. I just don't see Maryland being able to pull off a win against really any of them. Although the most likely win, I do see against Michigan State at home. Michigan State's a team that definitely is not going to be as good as they were last year. They're losing a lot, including running back Kenneth Walker. And that defense last year, that pass defense, was atrocious last year for Michigan State. And if they don't fix that this year, watch out, because Maryland could come in there and pull off or could stay at home, or let me rephrase. Michigan State could come into Maryland's building, and if that pass defense is still as horrible as it was last year, which let's be honest, it shouldn't be, but in case it is, that's a recipe for an upset right there with this Maryland team. In terms of your 50-50 games, again, I've already talked about SMU. Rutgers at the end of the season could decide whether or not one of those two teams make a bowl game. And then you have games against Northwestern that, well, let's be honest, you probably should win. That's a game against a team that isn't going to be that great, although the gap, I believe that Maryland's offense is so much better than Northwestern's offense. So I do think Maryland should be fine there. And then Purdue and Indiana. Look, I think Purdue is going to be really, really good this year. I think they're going to surprise some people. You're going to have to wait till my Purdue predictions to find out what I mean. But then that Indiana game is pretty favorable as well. The only reason it's in yellow is because it's on the road. In fact, you could even put that Northwestern game in yellow-green if you would like. But for the Maryland Terrapins in 2022, I do have you guys going back to another bowl game. And I think 6-6 is right there, but I also think 5-7 is there as well. Again, that Rutgers game at the end of the year could very well dictate whether or not one of these two teams ends up making a bowl game. But if you want to look for 6 losses here, I do think Maryland barely gets by SMU. Then you got Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Penn State, and Ohio State as probably your 5 most likely losses. And then I don't think it's super difficult to find another one on the schedule. Again, you could get beat by Rutgers. You could get beat by Purdue. Who knows? Maybe Indiana is revamped and you go on the road and Indiana's able to beat you there. But I do think that this Maryland Terrapin team is going to have a 6-6 year in 2022. That floor being 5-7 and that ceiling, I do think this Maryland Terrapin team, that offense is going to be able to extend them to an 8-4 type record. So there you guys go. That's my Maryland predictions for 2022. Be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, anything you can to help out the channel. And remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.